my favorite day because it's the Voice of Bold Business Radio Day. We start with our live preview a few hours ago, and then we have our live stream right here, right now, at the top of the hour, 11 a.m. Mountain Time. We're talking about more purpose today with Jayne Sanders. And this program got me thinking in a lot of different directions. Those of you who stop by on a regular basis and you're using hashtag VBB radio, you never know where my brain is going to go. That's the one constant when we're talking and exploring and building out these ideas on the Voice of Bold Business Radio. So more purpose, right? Where did my brain go? My brain went to all kinds of things like, really? Am I not living full enough? Really? I guess I know that I have big shoes. Maybe I don't know how big the shoes I'm filling in this life actually are. Maybe there's something that I'm totally avoiding that I think I'm using my purpose for. And in fact, I'm not just quite yet. And how all of these things tie back into how I show up as a person, how I show up leading my business, how I show up for clients and to support them, how I show up when I'm on a sales call. And so now you know where my brain went as I was creating the outline for this, as I was preparing. As soon as Jayne said, yes, I will be on the show, my brain started to reel. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to her, and you'll meet her right after our introduction. Jayne Sanders is a master scientific hand and analyst and teacher. She's been featured in Forbes. They wrote an article about her work. She uses scientific hand analysis combined with her proprietary, purposeful, passionate living coaching process to help us discover our blind spots as well as our special talents. Remember, you're listening to More Purpose. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
You are in the right place for conversations about current problems you might be having, personal development that you're exploring, as well as just all the problems that we face as leaders in business. I mean, that's a big deal. Fighting fires, which hopefully it's more like problem solving instead of fighting fires, but sometimes they happen. And our conversation today is about more purpose. Maybe this idea and this conversation of finding more purpose, figuring out how we can more fully show up, will allow us to change and impact our awareness in how we problem solve and make decisions. Jayne, welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio.
Thank you, Jess, very much. I'm excited to be here. Love talking about this work, as you know.
Oh, I do know. And in fact, I remember the first time I saw you, we connected by email and you were like, hey, I want to come talk to a group that you're a part of. And I said, yes, come talk. And that was when you and I, not only did I get to hear you speak for the first time, I also am a client of yours. So we're just going to put that out here right now. Everybody, I've worked with Jayne and she is amazing. So we've got to think about this in terms of business, don't we?
It is a business show.
It is a business show. But all business, what? It starts with the people, doesn't it?
Oh.
And we're all in different walks of life.
Yep.
Yeah. How do you feel? I mean, on the range, do you tend to work with people that are in the same place in life, or do you get to see the gamut of all of the places that we can be?
Pretty much the gamut. Even because the main thing I do, as you know, is to help people identify their life purpose, how they're meant to make a difference in the world. So most of my clients were like I was, just stuck and not on it and knew it and didn't know what else to do. However, there are people who are much closer on purpose, fully on purpose, who just have this little doubt and they're looking for that validation, the confirmation that they're on track. And that gives them that permission and confidence to really step into it and fully go for it. It can be life-changing even when they're already on it.
Mm-hmm. It can be. And we're talking it is purpose. And it is our mission.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. You believe we all are here and we have a purpose and a mission of something to do?
Absolutely. And that's why I started looking for my purpose. I believed I had one. I didn't know what it was. And I tried all different ways of articulating and determining what my purpose was, and nothing was helpful enough until I found this. And it blew my mind. I knew it was right. I wasn't on it, which is why I hadn't been happy in my previous careers. I was for a while, but then I hit this wall of boredom and just knowing I was meant to do something else. So yes, everybody has a unique purpose, how we're meant to make a difference in the world.
Now, as leaders, right? So let's say we're managers, let's say we're business owners, and we have teams around us, whether that's a team, it's us with all of our vendors, or it's a team of 5 or 25 or 100, right? Whatever that looks like, how does purpose show up when we're also talking about leading and being and having good leadership skills too?
Well, one of the key words I believe for effective leadership is authenticity. And when leaders are not on purpose, first of all, they're not going to be fulfilled. They're not going to have that meaning that everybody craves. All the books now about happiness and joy talk about that it comes from meaning, not from money, not from success, not even from love. It comes from having meaning in your life, which means fulfilling your purpose. That's another word or description of purpose. So if leaders aren't on it, they're not going to be fully authentic to who they are, because our purpose is a huge element of who we are. So leaders need to be on purpose, and that makes them more effective. It helps them engage more. It helps them be better role models. I could just keep going down the list.
This reminds me of a funny story. Okay, Jayne. So here we
Let's
are.
hear it.
I was 21. I had sold my company, my first company. I was sitting in a boardroom with executive vice presidents, senior VPs, and then there was me, this woman, which I was the only woman in the room, and I was the only one that was anywhere close to 21. Everybody else was more than twice my age. And I remember thinking, how do I do this? How do I be here? And what I tried didn't work very well. And so I left and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. I felt like I was playing dress up. And I was like, I was glad to get out, because then at least I could acknowledge to myself I wasn't being who I really needed to be in there, but I don't know who else to be. I only have what was modeled to me by all of these, very intentional and thoughtful men. Don't get me wrong. They were all helpful.
Right.
But that's not how I lead. That's not what my leadership style is. And so I came back the next month and then I tried something different. And sure enough, that didn't work either. And I felt like, man, now I'm not only just playing dress up, I'm actually putting on my mom's clothes, right? I'm imagining dressing up in my mom's clothes, this wonderful professional businesswoman. And I'm showing up and I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't even know what I'm doing. I had big imposter syndrome. And I eventually figured it out, but it wasn't, for like another decade. And so here I am, right? I had this trial and error. And it sounds like you were on a similar path, this trial and error, but not necessarily knowing what you were trying when you were on this purpose path.
Kind of. I mean, I just never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel stupid. Even though I got, good grades, I just never had a clear, this is what I want to do. So I was just following my nose and got into business because I thought, well, at least I can pay the bills with that.
Right.
And I had 3 different careers before this one and enjoyed them for a few years, but would hit that wall again and just knew there was something else and something deeper.
What does the wall feel like? So for those of people listening out there, they're probably like, yeah, I've been there, or it doesn't matter, I can't change. So what can I do about it? So I guess maybe we should describe that stuck place and then what we can do about it.
Yeah, well, for me, I felt like something was missing. I just knew it. I wasn't on it. And I was bored. I would get really bored. My last career, I was a professional speaker for 20 years. And, that was very, very successful. But after 12 or 15 years, I got bored. And I wasn't motivated to do what it took to keep that business going, which is create new topics, invest in the business. I just didn't want to be doing it anymore. So that's, what you really got to look at too, is how fired up are you? How lit up? How motivated are you to really work at it? Because just because you're on purpose doesn't mean everything's going to be easy.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if I were to add to that and maybe dig in a little bit, this concept of doing what it will take. If we're off purpose, it's going to be hard and we're going to be dragging and we will be fighting every single step of the way. Yet
It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. Yet when we are on purpose and we are willing to do what it takes, even though it might be hard, we don't go to bed depleted more than when we woke up.
Right. It just feels better. You just
Yeah.
know it. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
It's just inspiring. And the fulfillment that I get from this work is off the charts. And it gives me the motivation to do that hard work and to work through the challenges, because everybody's always going to have challenges.
Always. So so does knowing our purpose lead to our values, or could we look at our personal values and then figure out and have insight around what our purpose may be?
I don't think there's a direct connection between the way I look at purpose and values. Now, your values, first of all, I don't believe most people know what they are.
I would agree with that.
They're
And in
not
fact,
really
I have proof from my own studies and questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're not clear on that. So, but knowing your values certainly helps and will help you go through those tough times.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can know what your values are and take your top 3, let's say, and hold those up beside your purpose and use those as your guiding light and your lighthouse, man, you are good to go.
We did not rehearse that before this show. You basically said exactly what I say all the time, Jayne, which is true. And
really? Okay.
Yeah. I have 3 personal values. The business, Red Direction, has 3 values. My family has 3 separate values. So I have 9 that I'm working with, but I understand how I can show up because I know mine. I've written them down.
Yep.
And actually, I would say a lot of people will say they know what their values are. Like over 90% of people will be like, yeah, I have a sense of what my values are. And when I ask them, have you ever written them down? 100%. I've only met, and I say 100%. So like 99.5%, because there are a few people out there that have written them down, have written down their goals. And then other ones that just have their goals, their values written down. Do you want to know something? Only a tiny fraction of that actually have what they mean, because words have different meanings. How does it look? How does it sound? When somebody's doing it, what do you experience when you're on the receiving end as well as on the giving side? And when we know those, we have you're right, we can hold them up. They become our North Star. They become that compass and provide direction.
Well, and I would say we could go way off on values, but you have far more than 3 values. You've just identified your top priorities.
Correct. Well, because I can't remember pages and pages of them. Right. And so
and they can shift.
Exactly. They shift. And you want to know a secret? And so I'm curious. So I'm going to tell you the secret. And then I want to hear one way that you help people figure out their purpose, maybe 2 ways or 3 ways, right? Just a few. When we're talking about values, I have everybody write down all the words that they identify with in some capacity. Mm-hmm. Then I have them group them together. So you have specifically in 3 groups, and there might be a few outliers, but in general, all of your values can fit into 3 groups. And then you pick one word of all those values in each group to be the value that is defining everything else in that group. So not only do you have your personal value, you have the value that's defined by all the other values that you believe are important and put priority on. And now you know what it looks and sounds like at the end of that little exercise to be able to do that. So it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be remembered to be pulled out.
Well, it's sometimes it is hard for people to prioritize, and the way I explain it is you're not eliminating, you're just prioritizing.
That's right.
All these other words are still part of your makeup.
Yeah. And so give us the hints, give us a couple of tips about how you are discovering and really helping us discover, solidify, clarify our individual purposes.
Well, the purpose, and this gets down into the mechanics, the neuroscience of scientific hand analysis. And it is scientific. The lines in your hands actually mimic the neural pathways in your brain. So it's not palm reading, although it can look like it. It's, as you mentioned, Forbes wrote an article about it. Neurologists are getting involved in it. The primary book that was written about it by the founder a neurosurgeon, wrote the foreword to the book, a neurosurgeon from Stanford. Anyway, so one of the key elements of scientific hand analysis are your fingerprints, which you're born with. They form at 14 to 16 weeks. And the fingerprints reveal a lot of very, I'll say pithy, because I love that word, P-I-T-H-Y. I always have to spell it. I'm saying pithy. Information comes from the fingerprints, including the foundation of your life purpose. So for me, the way I help people identify their purpose is through a hand analysis. Now, there's also an expanded version of their purpose, which brings in some other elements that we can talk about later. But it's the most accurate way to identify purpose, in my opinion, on the planet. I tried everything first, and this is not just me saying this, but that was my experience. Other things can be very helpful, but through the hand analysis, it's more descriptive and more comprehensive and specific. I've read over 3,000 hands. Nobody has had the exact same expanded purpose.
Wow. Now that lends credence to this need for authenticity and the fact that we may label people so we feel like we're part of the in crowd or part of feeling belonging, yet within that, there is still something we are here to do that is our job. It is our reason, among others, for being here. You know, we've got a question from Kara. Do you want to respond to that before I bring in Kara's question?
Well, what I wanted to remember to say is that, oh darn, now I had a neuron misfire. Oh yeah, it's not a job description. That would be crazy. Right. So the good thing is you have choice. We can express our purpose in ways that use our gifts and light us up. So we have options. We're not put into a box of a particular career. That would be a little cuckoo, you know, really. So
and I guess when I was saying that, I wasn't thinking job description. I was just when I said job, I meant our reason for being.
And I understood that. It just reminded me of this very important point.
And that's very, you know, that's actually really good because when we talk about things like this, Jayne, it's easy for us to shortcut and use words and speak at a level where people that are listening haven't been to yet. So I always appreciate stepping back and creating a space for everybody wherever they are on their journey to have a place at our table, because that's what it's about. Join our party, everybody.
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah.
All right. So Kara shared a quote and a question. So those of you listening, hashtag VBB Radio, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook live stream, whatever it is, we want to hear from you. Eva is ready for those questions. All right, Kara, here it comes. The best quote from a TV show I ever heard. I don't care if I'm lonely. I just don't want to be insignificant. What do you think? Self-purpose leads to significance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with that. Yes, you need to be doing, and everybody's purpose, when they get it, it feels big. You know, who wants a dopey little purpose, first of all? And secondly, everybody's purpose feels big, but nobody has a purpose they are not capable of fulfilling.
Oh, wait, say that again. Say that again.
Nobody has a purpose. I know it gives me goosebumps too.
Yeah.
That they are not capable of fulfilling. They may choose not to, but they have the capacity and the gifts, the capabilities, the talents to fulfill that purpose in a way that lights them up and makes them happy.
And are we destined to be unhappy or feeling stuck if we don't live up to the full purpose?
In some way, yeah.
Okay.
You won't feel complete.
Okay. So there'll always be that calling or that longing could be us on our mission and not, there's more still. There's more.
And it bothers some people more than others.
Okay.
And more every day. You know, the world is changing. We're being called. I liken it to, you know, divine, spirit, source, the universe, God, whatever your word is, lighting matches under our butt.
Yeah.
So some matches are closer to our butts than others, and some butts are more sensitive than other butts.
Okay. We make quotes.
I wouldn't quote that.
I'm thinking that's not going to be one of them.
No, I don't think so.
It's hilarious. And it's very vivid. And your point, well taken, is that when the time is right, when we decide we've had enough, we want more, we're ready to do more, that stake will go in the ground. Something will say it's time.
Because some people don't feel like they deserve it. They just feel like that's a dream for other people, and that their job is to just stay where they are and cycle. Right. So, and I feel badly about that, because now I know, after decades of search, what it feels like to be on purpose.
So I'm thinking about now tying these two things together, purpose and values. And the reason I'm tying them together, and maybe duty, right? How we do our world. Some of us lead with this concept of duty. Some of us lead with this concept of freedom. Some of us lead with a concept of accomplishment, credentials, something like that. And there's more. I'm just going to stop with those three. And when that thing that we lead with, right? Freedom, duty, achievement, is always the lens we use, and we still feel that calling, that longing, is there something that you could give us that we could look at differently? Like maybe it's time to ask for a raise. It's time to ask for that promotion. It's time to consider what's next. It's time to make a will. I mean, it could be anything. It's time to rethink what I eat for dinner every day, or bringing my lunch to work, right? There's this thing, and it could be anything. And I know it's very general. So if there's a very general way to go, okay, if we're feeling on purpose, yet we still have this longing, yet no matter what we do, we're going to look at the world through this lens. How do we actually make sure they're lined up to make a good decision?
Okay, you lost me a little bit in that. Is there a way to make that really short?
Yeah, probably not, because that's what I think. But that's okay.
So
let's see.
If you're on purpose, well, first of all, you will evolve, right? And your purpose, the expression of your purpose, can evolve. So like mine, I will be doing constantly upscaling, constantly evolving my work, because it keeps calling me.
Yes.
Or pushing me, or a match comes back around to light my butt, just to make sure that I'm going and going and going. So I think once you get on purpose, it's not static. It just doesn't stay there. You're going to want to keep expressing it and expanding it. So if somebody, for example, is in a paid job, and they start thinking, well, I really love this work, but something's missing. It's probably not a raise, although that's always a suggestion. I would put together a dream project and pitch it. What you'd really love to work on or be in charge of, and put together a proposal and pitch it to the higher ups. You might consider volunteering on the side for a cause that is very meaningful for you. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple of good ways. Did that answer your question? I think I got it.
I think it did. And I think it gets me to the next part of it. That was the first part. And I love the concept of volunteering and being able to put together an idea, because those actually build other very necessary business skills. Yep. And thinking about problem solving, right? You're a business owner. I'm a business owner. We have different experiences that got us to these points. Our teams are set up differently, yet we still all have to make decisions in this role, right?
All the time.
All the time. So when we know we're evolving, and when we know we're on purpose, or when we know we're off purpose because we're feeling this calling, how do we line that up with our ability to make decisions? Does it impede them? Does it help them?
It helps them. And it goes back to that values discussion.
Okay.
So again, within the description and sphere of your purpose, looking at your values, the decision should be clear. So my number one value is freedom. So as long as I really pay attention to that, when I'm making a decision within my business, which is the expression of my purpose, um, I'm good.
You're good. How do you define freedom for yourself?
Oh man, I learned that the hard way.
Okay.
And it was, well, I was able to articulate it once I got my hand analysis. I was like, oh, no wonder. I mean, the need for that, for freedom, is all over in my hands. And it explained so much about my life, not just the freedom part. The hand analysis explained, like, oh my God, no wonder I did that and liked that and didn't like that and hated that and made that decision and went through this and went through that. So what freedom looks like to me is not feeling obligated or squished or possessed or clung to, or in servitude. So, and I set aside, I create my schedule to give me the freedom I need, which also keeps my sanity and keeps me from burning out, because I've burnt out 2 or 3 times already in this business. And so that I can ride my horse, like yesterday morning on a Monday morning, and do my workout and walk in nature so that I'm better prepared and in a better place to serve.
All right. So your values are touching not only every part of your life, also how you do strategy, also how you decide what you want from your role, what you want from the people you surround yourself with. That's very cool. By the way, everybody, I don't know if you heard this, but she was talking about the decision-making process and everything goes through freedom. Step 2 of Jessica's 4-step decision-making. Because I'm like, dude, we are so on the same wavelength here, Jayne. Now, I know there are going to be people here that are like, I want to know more about my hands. I want to know what's in my hands. And so can I ooze love about you for a minute?
Oh no, Jess, don't do that at all.
Okay. So, Jayne Sanders has a website. She's going to give it to you. It will be in the show notes. She's got this fantastic newsletter that she sends, and she tells you what's going on, things that you might find in your hand and what they mean, and sometimes even questions to consider, because whether you've had a hand analysis or not, they're great questions just for personal development, just for getting centered. And so once you have a hand analysis, provided you want to do that with Jayne, it will expand your knowledge, because she is so giving and willing to say, this is what's going on. Here's how it looks. This is how it might show up. And you might want to ask this question. So where do people go, Jayne, to sign up for your newsletter?
purposewisdom.com.
Great.
And there's an opt-in box in the upper right corner. They also get a free video if they do that.
Oh, yeah? What's in the video?
It's a description of heart lines. So,
yes.
The heart line is the relationship style, how you communicate in relationship, how you express love and affection, and how you want love and affection expressed to you. And it's not just romantic, it's business relationships as well. So there's a 10-minute video that briefly, because I could spend 10 minutes on each one, but it briefly describes each of the 4 possible heart lines.
And our heart lines are typically big enough. We can figure that out from that video and listen to what you're saying and get some insight.
In many cases, sometimes they can be complex in their combinations, and they may be different ones on each hand.
Which mean different things too.
Yeah. And you'll also, if you can't tell, just listen to the video and you'll resonate with 1 or 2 more than the others. They're not mutually exclusive. Heartline is a tiny % of all the information that's possible in the hands, but it is one of the easiest things to determine yourself.
You said in relationship. I love it when people say that, because we tend to put other words in there, right? Like in a relationship, or defining or labeling our relationship. And you were talking about business relationships and personal relationships. And so relationships to people, and I'm thinking about relationships to our pets and to inanimate objects or things that like eating, right? We are in relationship with all of those things. And so knowing how we show up is a benefit. And there's a flip side of that too, isn't there? There's this concept of, well, if we know what we're good at, does that mean everything we're not good at is a weakness?
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't work that way. There are Okay, so remind me that you asked me this, because your comment about relationships brought me to a point, and I want to do a callback.
Okay.
So just using myself as an example, I have two relationship styles. I have two heartline types.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is one of my key need for freedom markers.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is all about helping others. So I have this combination of needing my freedom, but also being very driven
Mm-hmm.
to help others, which I think is fascinating considering what I do. Now, just because something doesn't show up that you're really good at doesn't mean it's a weakness.
Okay.
But every marking in the hands, and my whole lens with every question, Jess, comes from hand analysis and my corporate management and coaching experience. So every marking in the hands has both what we call a master and a student path. Master path feels good. The more master paths you're on, the easier it is to live in alignment with purpose. And that is the only way to that joy and meaning that everybody craves. The student path is all the yucky feelings in life, feeling bored, stuck, frustrated, unfulfilled, sad, angry, procrastinating, relationship challenges, money stuff, depression. All those are different student paths that show up. And the more student paths you're on, the more challenging it is to live in alignment with purpose. Mm-hmm. Nobody can be on the master path of any marking 100% of the time. We're human, right? We're works in progress. But when you identify what your student paths are, then you're aware. And that awareness gives you the power to make a different choice. And you can call it work on them if you want, but to me, it's just stepping away from them and moving, at least temporarily, to what the master path looks like. So it's stepping away from them, the way I like to look at it. What's that book, Discover Your Strengths? Mm-hmm. I don't think you can't ignore your student paths, because they kick you in the butt when you're on them.
Boy,
I seem to use the word butt a lot. I'm hearing myself, but
nothing wrong. You know what? We need a good kick in the pants or a kick in the butt once in a while.
Kick in the tush, whatever.
Isn't that what this work is about? I mean, this work that we're doing in self-development, it's not easy. It's not messy. And what I like about what you're saying in that capacity is that it doesn't always have to come from within us. If we just open our eyes and we observe, we will have things illuminated to us that we don't have to figure out on our own. And for somebody like me, who I get my energy and my attention and my everything that happens, I start outside, I bring that energy in, and then I figure out what I'm to do with it. Other people can have this energy within them, and they just can create this energy out. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're just two different ways of doing it. So I always get kicked in the butt. I'm not that self-discovery person. So when you say stuff like that, I'm like, yep, this is great. So if we tend to be outside, it would be maybe the student path to look in. And if we tend to be internal, it could be the student path to look out and see what else we might be missing in our cues. Is that a good example of using your language?
Well, let me add a different perspective to this.
Thank you.
Nobody can do everything themselves.
Right.
Nobody. I mean, the most successful professional athletes, entertainers, executives, all have coaches. And my problem for years and years was trying to figure it out myself. So you can't, no man is an island, right? I mean, there's a reason all these cliches and quotes were created. So yeah, we got to ask for help. You can't figure everything out yourself.
Right.
And I completely spaced on the first part when you first started talking, because a thought came in and I didn't want to interrupt you. So
that's okay.
Maybe it'll come back later.
Learning is what it comes down to. Our willingness to lifelong learn and recognize some of it will be inner inquiry. Some of it will be shown to us, provided we choose to see it.
Yep. And that reminded me, thank you. Everybody gets kicked in the butt.
That's right.
It's all a matter of how hard and how often. And that's what the knowing your student paths can help you with. So that it reduces the intensity and the frequency of those kicks.
Love it. This is the voice of Bold Business Radio. You're listening to program 154, titled More Purpose, with our special guest, Jayne Sanders. We have two questions that we're going to pipe in before we go back to our pin of in relationship. And that is, the first is hashtag VBB Radio from Michael. Can we ever fulfill purpose? Or are there different types of purposes, and some of them have to be worked on all the time?
Well, through my lens, through scientific hand analysis, you have one purpose. You can express it in different ways. It will evolve, as we discussed before, or can evolve and change, but the core of it, the difference that you're making, will remain the same. It can look different. You can try it one way, and that, after a few years, that may poop out, and then you bring in something else. Or expand that, but it will always be the same purpose.
Okay. Thank you for that. And now this is a question from R. Scott, and he's asking, in playing out one's purpose in life, are there steps we need to go through in sequence? And if so, and we miss a step or skip one, what happens?
I wouldn't look at it that way. I mean, let's say you're not on purpose. You get a hand analysis, you get your purpose handed to you on a platter, but you don't know what that looks like. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I was so lit up and inspired. I knew that if I took action on my student paths, I would be led to the right people to help me, and I would figure it out. And that's exactly what happened within a few months. It was like the big old V8 slap to the head. Oh my God, I was so inspired and on fire about my life before I even knew what to do with my purpose. So if you're not on purpose and then you determine what it is, to me, the number one step is determine what that looks like. Mm-hmm. Explore, have fun, get purpose coaching if you need it, but figure out how you want to express that purpose and what that looks like. It could be a new business. It could be bringing in different projects into your job. It could be volunteer work on the side. You don't have to change your entire life to get on purpose. I did, because I was ready for that and I wanted that, but you don't have to. It's like, it does require change, and change is scary. And I always tell people, getting on purpose is going to feel like stepping off a cliff. It could be a little tiny cliff. It could be a great big cliff, but either way, it's scary. And you've just got to trust that the parachute will open, and it will, but you will pee your pants on the way down.
That's right. You heard it here.
Yeah.
Bold Business Radio.
You will, but we got washing machines, right?
That's exactly right. And if you haven't subscribed, just that comment right there, you are in for it, because we talk like this all the time. It's candid, it's real, it's raw. And if it's not, I'm not doing my job as your host, and our guests are not doing their job at showing up either. So thank you, Jayne, for meeting me right here and being willing to be all in and 100% present with me here, all in, 100% present. Notice I didn't say 50-50. What happens when we expect or think that we are only 50% responsible if we're in relationship with something else?
Well, you're going to end up with the experiences you had at those meetings that you talked about. If you're not there 100%, I mean, I have to be authentic. I was in the corporate world and wasn't for a long time, and it just ate me up and made me miserable. So, if anybody's wondering to put me on their podcast, I will say P, and I will say but, and I will say other things too, because I was raised in a small town in Southern Illinois, and we're kind of hicks down there. And, I have to be true to who I am. I just can't say, oh, and you'll be scared, and that's it. No, I want to put a picture to it.
Right. Because it's real. And it's what to expect. Anything else, I think, is sugarcoating. And sugarcoating never gets us very far. And that comes back to this concept of in relationship. You wanted to circle back. Did that help you get to circle back? Or do you want me to come up with a couple of other points we were talking about then?
I totally forgot what I was going to address.
Okay.
About in relationship.
I had talked about the fact you use the word in relationship instead of putting a label or a qualifier.
Well, there's so many different types of relationships. So yeah, there's also relationship with yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think you covered it.
Oh, can we talk about that relationship with yourself? I think we tend to avoid that. I think when we're thinking about executive presence, we're thinking about decisions that we have to make. We're thinking about putting ourselves aside and actually looking from an external perspective at what's
Mhm.
best for our business, because we are never our business's one or 100. And anytime we are, we're getting in our own way. So how do we shift our relationship with ourselves to be more aware?
There's a lot of technology, there are a lot of tools to
Hmm.
help us do that. And usually, by the time somebody gets to me with scientific hand analysis, they're on a personal growth track,
Okay.
right? I mean, somebody that doesn't want to know where their growth opportunities lie
Okay.
should not get a hand analysis. They won't take it in. They won't be able to hear it. Um, that said, the primary, the gist of it, of a hand analysis, is much more than growth opportunities. I mean, it's your purpose, it's your gifts, it's all the, not all, but of many of your markings, the master paths as well. So it's balanced, and most people walk away, and you can tell what your experience was, but most people walk away very inspired and on fire and much more confident in who they are and where to take action.
So I want to talk about the not so great character traits of authenticity and maybe the master path a little bit. And I'm saying not so great because when we're authentic, we can be ourselves and we can still be respectful. But when we are ourselves and other people are offended or feel like we're rude to them because of, well, we're just being our authentic self, I think there's a line there and a
There
responsibility
is.
that I'd like to have you address a little bit, because what I see is people tend to take that too far.
Well, too far, certainly for you, and too far for me.
Okay.
Some people perhaps not.
Okay.
And with all this, you've seen all this, whatever that, those new rules for privacy policy in terms of
Yeah.
condition. And so I was exploring those and have changed mine, of course, and put all that up. But somebody, and I can't remember who it was, and I wouldn't say anyway, had on there, look, here's be aware that we have a policy about swearing. We do it, and we do it a lot. And we use like what people consider to be the worst words possible. So if that doesn't work for you, don't opt in. Don't be
Right.
a part of my community. So at least there was a warning there.
Yeah.
And I think there is a line to a point, and sometimes, I mean, if I cross a line with somebody by saying you pee your pants and by saying butt kicks, then they are not my tribe. So,
Well, and
yeah.
I think they're overly sensitive. And okay, so here we go. We're looking at a scale because I'm having the same reaction. Yes, they're not your tribe. And I'm like, well, there are a lot of things that we could say that could push people over the edge, and people might be surprised, and I'm okay with surprise.
I love surprises.
I love surprise too. That's exactly right. Okay. Well, the other part of that is then, so let's say it doesn't fit. Let's say that authenticity, and granted, here's the thing. What do we do? When we learn something new and when we decide to do something new, we tend to push the far edge of the envelope. And then we come back when we realize how far that edge is, and are we actually comfortable at that far edge, and where are we, and do we like the response that we're getting from other people? Do we like the interactions that we're having? Are they actually serving us? And so it makes me think about talent, because I can see, we don't have to necessarily make big changes, but there is change. And I'm thinking about talent loss. When there is a perspective or a perception that somebody's really talented in our company, is on a path of self discovery and says, man, I'm not being true to myself. I'm not being authentic. And they decide to be authentic, but they go a little farther because they've got to figure out where the boundaries are at work. And so when we are noticing this as leaders, okay, and I'm totally talking about this, what ends up happening is people decide, they go out there and they're like, man, this doesn't feel good anymore. I got to go. They're not helping me be my authentic self. When I think that that's a misconception. I think business owners, and I think teams want us, and I know I can speak for myself in this, I want my team to be themselves. I want them to push the envelope. I also want them to understand what we're doing and how we do things here, so that we can all figure out how to work together effectively. So when we're seeing somebody in this journey, and maybe we're part of it, okay? Maybe we come in one day and we're like, we're drastically changing the mission of the company. It's hard for our teams to step up and work with that. Same thing, people who are listening, who have a boss, who have somebody that you report to. When you go do something new, it's going to be hard for them because everybody doesn't like change. There's a relationship there. So what can we do? What can we do for people who are ready to expand out, to go a little further than they've ever gone before? And when it feels uncomfortable, how can we set up a stage to find out that maybe you wonderful, talented, great addition to our company in your new space, in your new evolution, actually still belong here?
So I think it starts with setting expectations.
Okay.
And certainly a very detailed, employee handbook could be part of that. And also just open communication, consistent open communication, so that it would be no big deal to walk up to that employee who's kind of stepped over the line a little bit and say, yeah, I don't know. That's for outside of work. It's just like you can't smoke weed when you're sitting in work.
Nope.
So as an example, do whatever you want when you're at home. So if the expectations have been set up appropriately and the communication has been open all along, it would be no big deal for a leader to say, John, I think that's a little bit too much. So let's reel it back in just a tiny bit. And then when you're off campus, go nuts. And then John would be like, hey, no problem. Because that open communication was already there. And open communication, of course, is the foundation of trust.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking back now to when you had said, even in your current business, in your current career, you've burnt out several times.
Yeah.
Were there things that, in hindsight being 2020, were there things that were the same every time, or were you actually learning something new every time?
Every time I burnt out?
Yeah.
Same shit, different day.
Okay.
So it took, and when I say burnt out, it's relapses for me of chronic fatigue. I had it very, very severely 30 years ago. And when I am not really taking care of myself, I can go into relapse. And I was doing hand analysis 5 days a week, starting at 9 a.m, going till 6 p.m. I can't do that. It takes a lot of my energy and a lot of my focus and preparation and concentration. So that's why I was burning out. And when I'd get really busy with a whole lot of hand analysis, I would expand my schedule to serve. I was over serving.
Yeah.
I'm in the School of Service, which is one of the things you learn from a hand analysis. And I was over serving. So 3 times that was my charm, not doing it again. So that's why, I'm very careful with my schedule that I put out there for clients to book their appointments.
Well, so so what's the most rewarding? I mean, yes, so there's things that you're learning. Thank you for sharing how it shows up for you, because it does show up differently for everybody, and recognizing that burnout doesn't have to just be this specific set of symptoms. It could include relapse. It could include something new that is outside of what we typically associate with burnout is really important as anybody in life, because we all face times of overwhelm, frustration, and falling back on old habits, if you will, and how they manifest. So what's the most rewarding part of this particular career, being your 4th career?
Changing lives every day. It is so fulfilling. People that take action on the information from their hand analysis, it can change their lives. Some people don't even have to take action. It just starts opening clarity and opening doors and changes things. And then, of course, the coaching. And that's why I call it, if you noticed in the introduction that you used, purposeful, passionate living. Because by the time I'm done with you, you're going to feel passionate about your life and your work and be on purpose. Or on your way there. I'm not a business coach, so they need you for that.
We make a good team that way.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's actually, I take people who are working on themselves, right? And I figure out how do we create the rules for all of us on our own paths to work together wherever we happen to be in our evolutions, on the journeys that we're on, and still work together effectively and achieve a mission as a team. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So we talked a little bit about, I want to know about executive presence, because all of us have a presence. We may not recognize the presence that we have. And some of us are, and I'm one of them, changing and finding the nuances and building my presence. Some would call it executive presence. Some would call it personal presence. Some might call it, I'm looking for confidence or charisma or something like that. How do we use our purpose to build and maintain our presence?
When you know your purpose and are taking steps to express it, the further along that goes, the more confidence you're going to embody. Being on purpose just feels so darn good. And that those are weak words, but it's empowering. It really steps you into your power. And that the confidence, empowerment, clarity, all these things feed our presence.
Presence is such an important piece of everything that we do. How we are present, not only with each other, right? Like, am I all here or am I distracted? But it's also the energy that we give off, and it's also what we choose to give away in our space.
Mm-hmm.
And those healthy boundaries. A lot of what we've been talking about in this second half have been around boundaries. Do you have any tips or hints of how we can, on this journey, figure out what our personal boundaries are for, I'm going to use the word prosperity, but overall, just being able to stay sane while we're on our journey?
Two things. And I'm afraid I'm going to forget the second one because I get so present in the moment that everything else falls aside. But notice, to answer your question, it's so important to notice how we feel in our bodies. When something doesn't feel good, some boundary has been violated by you, yourself, or by somebody else, or a situation. So start tracking those patterns. When something doesn't feel good, if it just feels off, or suddenly your energy drops a little bit, or you feel drained, or you feel sad, or all of a sudden you're angry or grumpy, or you feel a tightness in your throat or in your chest or in your gut, our bodies try to help us all the time and talk to us all the time. And if we paid more attention to what's going on in our bodies, you're going to identify your boundaries. And, it's hard to do that. So like the next day you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, that didn't feel good. I used to do that all the time.
I process a little slowly. Yes.
That didn't feel good. What was it about that? And take some time and figure it out. Think about it and peg it so you know where that came from. And then that's what you avoid. And yes, I did forget the second thing I was going to say.
So we'll call it the one thing in the show notes.
The one thing. Yeah, the one thing. What were we talking about before that?
So I asked about boundaries, and right before that, we were talking about presence.
Presence, boundaries. It's not there. Anyway,
that's okay.
Go ahead.
So Tim, I called you the wrong name. Tom is asking, so hashtag VBB radio. Is there a difference between our right and our left hands when we do this analysis? And how about between hands and feet?
Don't know about feet. I'll stick with hands. But there are many different things in the two hands. Generally, right hand indicates what you show out to the world, business. Generally, left hand is inner stuff, family, tight-knit community. If you're left-handed, some of that changes, but let me tell you, the gentleman that created this system, and by the way, he spent 40 years putting this database together, already included most of that in the database. So, but you will have, even though if you look at your hands and they kind of look alike to some people, there still are going to be many, many differences because everything means something. All those little top lines, the shape of your hands, the where your fingers are connected to the palm, how the fingers relate to each other, everything means something.
All right, Jayne, what makes it bold? What makes it bold to go after and seek and find out more about our purpose?
Because if you really want to be on purpose, it requires change. And making change requires courage or boldness, to use your words. Goes back to the cliff analogy or metaphor that I used. It does require change unless you're already on it. But even then, if you're coming for a hand analysis, you're going to get information that will behoove you to change. In other words, just take steps to move away from those student paths, and that requires being bold.
You're listening to the voice of Bold Business Radio. I can't believe how quickly our hour with Jayne Sanders has gone.
No kidding. Wow.
Right? Holy cow. So program notes. I've been frantically taking notes of our show, and we're going to put them together in a form that's going to be on voiceofboldbusiness.com, and it will be at /P154. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 154. You can also search for more purpose. All right. You've heard the hashtag a gazillion times, maybe more like 10, but really, hashtag VBB radio. Use it. Ask questions. We will have Jayne's information and be tagging her on social media, so you can too. Don't forget, go to her website. Remind us your website.
Purposewisdom.com.
And sign up for her newsletter. Get her free video. Figure out more. When you're on this self-development path, this is a great place to start to tap into. Now, we covered the gamut. I mean, I can't even read some of my notes, which is why I'm glad we record this. We have live stream. I get to go back and figure these things out. One of my biggest takeaways today is the fact that I was validated that we're always learning, always a good thing. It's also the fact that when we put out the presence that we want, and I'm going to call it a vibrational energy here for just a moment, the vibrational energy that we are around, we are going to attract people like us that are working at that same vibrational energy to lift us up. And those boundaries, here's the other part of that, those boundaries are so necessary for health, because they're also going to be the people who want to be at the place that we're at with the presence that we have, that will take some of our energy, and it takes energy away from us being around them as much as we may love them. So understanding and like them and want to work with them and may be necessary to our business team. So how do we create those boundaries? How do we create how we show up in the world in such a way that we can be who we are, 100% present, and really be alive in each moment? In my opinion, that's what we're doing every single chance we get to build and build more purpose.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.